Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Solo Spotlight on Spare Bedroom Studios, a podcast where we dive into personal stories, discussions, and advice for people trying to navigate life. Today, we have a special treat for all the music lovers out there, especially those who live for the electrifying beats of EDM. Our guest today is none other than Bryce Kenneth, a dynamic DJ making waves in the electronic dance music scene here in Canada, especially in Edmonton. Bryce has also toured in the U.S., bringing his unique sound to audiences across the world. Bryce has been captivating audiences with his high-energy performances, his innovative tracks, and quickly becoming a favorite in the EDM community. We'll be diving into his journey, exploring what it takes to thrive as a DJ, and uncovering the challenges and triumphs that he faces both on and on the stage. Imagine the pulsing rhythms, the vibrant lights, and the shared euphoria of a crowd united by music. This is the world that Bryce lives in, and today he's here to share his story with us. So let's get ready to explore the life of a DJ, the intricacies of relationships on the road, and a passion that fuels the beats. Please help me welcome Bryce Kenneth. Bryce.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're here today. Bryce Kenneth, up-and-coming DJ in the EDM scene here in Canada, here in Edmonton. He's also toured in other countries. We're so happy to have you here. I think this is going to be really insightful. So I first want to start off saying I really enjoyed the event, the Deep Down Outside. Yeah. We're also going to be going to the July 6th event. I really enjoyed that venue. I had my contentions about it until I actually went in, and then I was like, oh, this is actually kind of dope.
Yeah.
I was like, they kind of got something cool set up. Like, it's not a big footprint. It's not like
It's kind of like in the center of like downtown. Big shout out to Peter running the backyard here in Edmonton. It's a beautiful event space. And especially on a hot sunny day, the sunset there is beautiful.
Oh yeah, it was cooking, and it was a beautiful
spot.
Yeah, I actually messaged him before we went, and I was like, listen, like, I'd love to ask you some questions and interview you. He's like, well, it's 12 hours long, so like, when are you gonna be there? I was like, fuck, I didn't know it was I didn't know the event was so long. So when I messaged him, I'm like, yeah, man, like, I'll be there live streaming, so like, pull up. And he's like, what, for 12 hours? Yeah. And I was like, no, fuck, my bad.
Yeah.
So hopefully on July, I can ask him a couple questions, pick his brain. Maybe in due time, I can have him on the podcast.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. He's such a good dude, and he's doing a lot here for the city. And there's one thing that we could probably both say is that Edmonton needs to figure out how to set a day party, because
they don't have any good day parties.
We gotta figure that out.
Yeah,
that 2 p.m. to like 7 p.m. during the day on a Saturday on a beautiful day, like, people got to be showing up for that. Like, this event space is like fantastic for that.
And the thing is, now they're not losing business, because like, now that NHL is done, all the sports are done, and now like, it's still in kind of the peak of summer that you're gonna see those type of events really take off. And it's kind of like a niche. It's like when COVID happened and like comedians started doing like comedy shows outdoors.
Yeah.
It was like the first time it ever happened, right?
It's been, to be honest with you, from my perspective, it's been very, very successful. So just keep doing it and keep throwing events.
Yeah, great backdrop of Rogers Place, wicked. But yeah, anyways, we'd love to have you on, Peter, and I hope to get to know you more. Also, there was a guy setting up those like flowers. Was he one of the promoters? All black.
No, he wasn't one of the promoters. He is, so that's actually Nick. He goes artist name by Alokin. I have nothing but endless good things to say about that gentleman. He is, he's one of the kindest, most giving persons in the industry. He is actually half owner of Cynical Entertainment.
Okay, that's what, July 6th.
Yeah, so July 6th, there will be an event called Sun Kiss that's going to be happening at the backyard as well. Also, this is Ralph.
Yeah. Don't worry, you're going to see him in most episodes, because I can't leave him outside of the door because he'll just go apeshit. But
that was Nick. That was Nick.
Because I was going to roll up to him and be like, hey, you're the fucking owner of this place? Like, let's go interview now. Like, come on.
No, that's Nick. I feel like Nick would be fantastic to get here on the pod as well. He runs Cynical Entertainment, which is one of the best entertainment companies, I believe, here in Alberta. Very diverse. It brings in a lot of good techno, melodic techno, aggressive, and he's got a really, really good vision. Not only does he have a really, really good vision, he's got a very, very good work ethic, a very good site for production, and he's probably one of the hardest working and most genuine guys I've ever met in my entire life, and I've absolutely nothing but good things to say about him. But yeah, he was installing the flowers there at the event. He was kind of just adding a little bit of a good backdrop to the stage, which was pretty cool. It kind of gave some kind of a little bit more spice to the event.
Yeah, and I saw too briefly, like you guys, like when you were switching out with the female there, you guys were saying certain stuff of like where the decks were and stuff. What was that so like they could get on their rhythm, or how does that work with like when you're at a live event? How does that work when like you're transitioning, because you don't want the music to stop?
Yeah, you don't want the music to stop, and
so it's not like a collaboration between both.
It's kind of just like handing off to the next DJ and kind of setting them up, not for failure, but more so success. Like, what channel are you playing on? What channels are the CDJs on? So each CDJ is hooked up to either channel 1, 2, 3, and 4. Given you got 4 CDJs, you got 4 channels, 1, 2, 3, 4. Each CDJ is hooked up to a specific channel. So I was just letting her know which CDJ was on which channel, and it's pretty basic stuff.
Okay, so yeah, DJ, it's like shop talk,
pretty much,
essentially. Yeah, you're just like giving someone a brief,
kind of like setting them into just like set in the driver's seat and just kind of coast and cruise into their set.
Do you find that you're training on different types of equipment just to prepare yourself, or do you usually know like there's a standard with the venues? Like certain venues they might have cheaper gear, whereas other venues they kind of really treat you or they get you what you need. Like, how does that?
I don't want to say it's necessarily cheaper gear, but it's more so like you have older gear that it may be like a few years,
but still does the job.
It still does a job, yeah. Versus like the top notch, like for example, right now is like the CDJ 3000s, right? So like that would be like the best of the best that you'd have there,
right?
And like not everybody has access to that. That's totally fine. Like you think back like years ago, right? Like people are playing off of like CD players, and people are playing off vinyl, and then next thing you know, you're playing off like CDJs, like you're playing off like Nexus 2000s, and
it's not like an uncommon thing like for this shit to break, because you're in an environment where like people have drinks, people have like accidents happen, right?
Wear and tear constantly, like
exactly. Playing on the same
gear for like over and over and over. Like you need to like actually take care of your gear and like bring it in for repair if it needs repair, and make sure all like the buttons and faders and everything.
And would you use your own personal equipment for any of these events?
The only thing that I've used for these events is USB. I bring my USB, so I upload everything through Rekordbox on my laptop on my Mac, and I get all my tracks sorted and analyzed through that, queued up. And then once I show up to the event and to the show, I literally plug my USB in. It's time to go.
Fucking right. Yeah. So I want to kind of go into like a little bit of an origin story here. What specifically, was it the fan of music? Was it the fan of performance? What exactly like drove you to want to do DJing specifically?
I'll just kind of give you a little bit of a back history of like who I am and where I'm from. I'm originally from Windsor, Ontario, which is like almost like the most southwestern part of Ontario, right across the border from Detroit, Michigan. When I was a kid, and I asked my mom this all the time, like, you saw that I like love music and I love sound and I love speakers and I always loved having like house parties, and my thing was like make sure there's always like good music and everybody's having a good time, because I honestly feel that music brings so many people together. But I feel like the whole electronic music scene kind of stepped up for me was when I was in college. I was in college in London, Ontario. And I remember I busted out my MacBook and I'm like, I'm going to go on iTunes. And I went to this like specific playlist that was called Electronica. And at this point in time, I had never listened to like any kind of electronic dance music, nothing at all. And as soon as I clicked on Electronica, I went to like one of the first playlists, and I kid you not, the first artist that I ever heard play. And I was like, this is actually kind of interesting music. What is this? Which allowed me to dive into like further electronic music was it was Wolfgang Gartner, which is like he's pretty old school now, I would say.
Mine was Swedish House Mafia.
Still a very, very like good artist. But then it kind of like ventured me into like another branch of like deadmau5, and I'm like, okay, well, like what is going on here? Like there's just so much like variation, so much different like sound that is in the whole EDM category, like of electronic dance music. So that's what kind of like led me into the whole scene. But also like growing up in that southwestern Ontario little pocket there, like being across from Detroit is like the home of like techno music and like really, really good house music. So it's like you have this kind of
The melting pot.
like a melting pot, and like you're just like exposed to it like a really young age. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was like the start of like me getting into the electronic music scene. And then to kind of like step outside of that, like I ended up going to like one of my first festivals ever, and like the first festival that I went to was one in Toronto.
Escapade?
No, it wasn't Escapade. That one's in Ottawa.
Okay.
This one was called Veld. And I remember going there, and the first DJ that I saw live on the stage, I just like lost my mind. I was like, where am I? Like, I can't believe what I'm experiencing.
You're just sent into a whole different universe.
Dimension. Yeah. It was like the entire world stopped of everything that was going on in my life. And I was just present in like the music, people, the energy. And it was like, whoa.
Yeah, I went to a Dubs concert in Nova Scotia, and you walk in and like right away harps off, and I'm like, who is this person?
Yeah.
But you're like, it's literally
crowd controlling you in the entire,
and it's an electricity. You can feel it, and like you just can't.
Yeah.
And like I think that's where you talk about how like good it is for like community and having music and stuff like that, where it's evident that like you can see like people's mood change. You can see like the look in people's eyes when they come to these events, right? And just like, and
the happiness that comes onto their face.
And there's no ill will with anybody. No. Like everybody's just there to have fun.
Have a good time. There's no like arguing. There's no fighting. There's no like aggressiveness. Yeah. Like everybody is literally there just to like have a good time. And the atmosphere is honestly like none other. If I can honestly say, I feel like if you've never been to an electronic music event before in your life, at least once, I feel like it's one of those bucket list things that you should definitely
You're doing yourself a disservice.
You're doing yourself a disservice if you're not going to an electronic event.
Don't go to many like live events where like they're playing acoustically, right? Where it's actually
to each your own at that point, right? Like
right,
if you're into like rock music, if you're into like
exactly. But I think it's good that people take the opportunity, because I think, and you can probably attest to this, where I don't think people understand how difficult it is or how much goes into creating a track, and like how much of like you're just in the moment, or like certain things like where you Charlie Puth, he talked about like he made a record, but like some of the things were him dropping his spoon on a plate.
Yes.
And then he clipped
recording that and clipped it, and then you're like singing it.
And then he reverbs it, or people go like, "Oh, that's a banger of a song," and you're like, "I just had to like live life and go through the motion, right?" And it could have happened, it could not have happened, but I think people don't understand where like you look at some of these like softwares where it's like there's just lines and lines and lines of different audio files and different
many different options. Right. Excuse me, like we could literally record like the blind and the curtain going in and out of the window, making a noise against the window, right? Like you can record that,
and that can be like a bass beat or whatever, right?
Yeah, it could be like an effects that you put into your track that is like in the middle of a breakdown, you know, like it could be something as simple as that. I do just want to step back real quick on like the festivals and stuff. A lot of people associate with, and hear me out, like drugs and alcohol with festivals and music events, and like people are like, oh, I don't want to go there because this X, Y, and Z, you know. To be honest with you, you can be entirely sober and go and just enjoy your time. Like you don't need to be under any kind of like substance or intoxicated or anything. And like I just want to make that very, very clear, because to be honest with you, at the end of the day, what speaks the most is the music. Yeah, and I think that's something where it's a huge stigma, because you look at some events and they say we have testers for like the pills and stuff, brings it into another like level where you're like, we're actually accommodating this, but it's very far and few between where you see that, and it's more or less like, I think that has a lot to do with the people that are running the event, the promoters, how kind of greedy they are for money instead of wanting to have a safe place for people. Exactly. And I think too, it's also the dynamic of sometimes it's a weekend long, sometimes it's an evening, sometimes it's a week, right? So like when you look at it, it's probably consistent. I don't think it's the EDM scene that's causing the drugs,
and alcohol. It's just the drugs and alcohol that people like.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to do that in any
amplify the situation
Yeah.
and the excitement in the party, right?
And I don't think it's
to each their own at that point. Do what you got to do to have fun, and as long as everybody's having a good time, being safe and enjoying their time together.
And I think that's the biggest thing is the safety. Right? You want to have an inclusive event where people are genuinely coming, and especially the people that aren't used to that type of scene, right? Or they aren't used to because it's a little bit more of a vibe, right? So I think it takes a little bit.
Yeah,
and
that comes with anything.
Yeah.
You might not even like comedy until you go to a comedy show and you're like, wow, here I am just laughing my ass off. And next thing you know, you're going to every comedy show.
With your style of creation, what's on your playlist right now? What are your musical tastes? What do you find that heavily influences your style? Do you have certain artists that are on replay?
And this is a really, really good question. I'm a big fan of progressive house. I think that's what I'm like definitely known for is my progressive house.
Right.
I love obviously all sorts of sounds, but I would definitely say like a lot of progressive house.
Now, can you just explain that a little further of what like
progressive house is? Progressive house track is something that like it starts and it slowly kind of like brings you on a journey up, maybe a little bit down, up again, and like back out for the end of the track.
Right.
So it kind of takes you on like a little bit of like a melodic like journey.
Yeah.
And it's very like for me personally, it's very like emotional, and it's very like heart grabbing for me.
Right.
And I like it for me as an artist, like I feel like that's something that I take pride in is like being able to take people on a journey. That's like my favorite aspect of like being an artist, being a DJ is like taking people on that journey. Not to say that any other genre you can't take them on a journey, but I feel specifically with progressive house and melodic techno, you're able to take people on like this beautiful, lovely journey with numerous different sounds within the track.
And some people, they just have like it seems the way you're talking to is like you have your finger on the pulse, right? And like some people get it and some people don't, right?
Exactly.
So it's like that this is kind of your vibe, this is your thing. So it's almost counterintuitive to be like, well, why would I try anything else?
Yeah, to be honest, like not to knock on anybody else's genre or like what they're trying to do. Like for example, like I know for me, dubstep is not it for me. I know like tech house is not it for me. I just have so much comfort and love and passion for that melodic journey of like beautiful sounds, keys, pads, synths, like a very nice, like subtle, like rich bass line, versus like that's just my personal preference. And that's like kind of what like I kind of stick by. And to be honest with you, a lot of that inspiration has come from the likes of like Above and Beyond. Like I've seen Above and Beyond live I think 18 times.
Right.
Like almost to like I'm just a really, really
You're
big
fanboy.
fan.
Yeah, fanboy.
But they've given me like a lot of inspiration in my life, saved me a lot in my life during certain situations. And I feel like their music and their content, their radio show has allowed me to really kind of find a niche of specific style of music that I can implement into my life, and I can push that forward, whether it's like my relationships with my friends, my relationships with like a girlfriend, relationships with family. It's like and I'm trying to think what else too, like for example like Stan Kolev and Techlix from Outer Limits Recordings. Like these guys, their creations are like I've never heard so many like cool interesting sounds within within a track, within music. And it's like music almost touches every single emotion in my body that I never even knew I had that emotion in my body, if you know what I mean. And like they're very I feel like their inspiration comes from a lot of like India based sounds.
Okay.
Yeah, so like there's kind of like all this different kind of like culture that they mix within like the records that they make that allows me to just like.
They use a lot of like wind instruments, do they not? Or like a lot of percussion?
A lot of percussion. A lot of percussion, yeah. Like very, very good drums. Like their drums are like some of my favorite drums I've heard for sure.
Now, do you think there's like a skill gap between like, I'll give you like a sports analogy. So say like I play on a basketball team. The goal is you want to win games. The goal is you want to sell records and give performances. But your style or your like archetype, is there like a certain level of skill that's attributed to that archetype where say someone does a more hardcore style? Is there a level of skill that differentiates like you from another DJ? Is there like something like, are you like, do you think you might be good at certain sounds that say the next person is good at, or is it just like a lane that they tried to drive into?
I feel like music is just so subjective as is. So, I mean, to answer your question, I feel like everybody has their own skill and everybody has their own piece of the puzzle that they can bring together. And I feel like, say, for example, somebody can build up a track or build up a record and be like, hey, like I've got from 1 minute to 3 minutes, and like now I'm at like a writer's block, and it's like, okay, well, pass me the track, or vice versa, I'll pass you the track, and I'll give it to you, and you have fresh ears and new creativity and new ideas on it. You may be able to take that track and flip it entirely and just like turn it into something that like this is like, wow.
And that's probably very.
That's why I'm a big fan of collaboration. I feel like collaboration is huge.
Well, it's probably extremely undervalued, right?
Very undervalued because, I feel like it's very undervalued.
Well, because given the creative, you're not talking X and O's, right? Like it's not like A plus B equals C. It's like, no, this guy could genuinely, like, he could have heard a door shutter, or he could have heard like something and been like, this would work perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, if I didn't reach out and like kind of humble myself, or not even humble myself, but just like, you're willing to be able to take that criticism. And I think that's probably a big thing where you're like, you kind of have to understand that like, there's always going to be someone else that can like help me with this. And like, 100%. It's always okay to ask for that help and like reach out to people because.
Absolutely.
And
I feel like it's very, very important.
Yeah. And with that, you talk about having like certain people that you look up to. Have you ever had the opportunity to mentor someone yourself, or have you ever had any up and coming DJs that have came to you for advice, and what did that feel like?
I honestly feel like you're doing a disservice if you're not trying to bring up other artists and other DJs.
Right.
I feel like if you're gatekeeping other DJs or other artists, I feel like I'm just not a big fan of that. I feel like sharing the wealth is very, very important. Some experiences that I've experienced may be helpful for other DJs and other artists that are up and coming as well. And I feel like it's very, very important to keep that collectiveness and cohesiveness amongst the entire scene versus like kind of like stepping out and like putting people on the side or like trying to like putting people down. You know what I mean? But I can think of like certain scenarios where people have messaged me and asked me for help, or like what kind of direction they should go into, or what they can do better, or like, hey, can you listen to this track and let me know what you think about it and give me your criticism or your positive critique on it. And I try to do my best in that, obviously without wearing myself thin, because at the same time too,
you can't do too much.
I can't do too much because once I start to do too much, and once I begin to like put a lot of my focus into other pockets, I feel like I'm not doing my own. And I also feel like at that point too, it's like that's when it takes away from my creativity, and it takes away from like my energy to be able to sit in a studio or sit in front of my computer to prep a set, or like actually begin or start a track or even finish a track.
Do you think it like in some way too, do you think the amount of collaborations that you do can inherently like dilute your brand?
You gotta, to be honest with you, you gotta like have a threshold, and you gotta create boundaries for yourself, because if you're not creating boundaries for yourself, you'll definitely find yourself exhausted, and you always need to be able to have some sort of that creativity. That
do you find you're saying no to a lot of people?
I don't want to say,
and not in a mean way, but in like a respecting, or like, because I always tell people, even when I'm doing this like podcast, I say like, whatever happens with this umbrella, people in my life, my personal life, my work life, whatever, is like, you need to take it professionally, not personally.
Yeah.
So like, if I'm fucking you off, it's not because like I hate you or I'm an evil person.
Yeah.
It's just genuinely I don't see the vision, or like it's just not good. Like if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
You just understand like you're putting too much on your plate, or it's just something that maybe you can't do.
Yes.
Right.
And that's one thing that I've learned in the past too, is putting way too much on my plate and not being able to like get out of it. So now, once like I've cleaned off my plate, I'm now able to like have my boundaries set where it's like, okay, like I can help maybe here, but like maybe this time I won't be able to help. But it's not like, it goes back to what you're saying, like it's like whether we're friends or not friends, there's like a professional business side to it, and there's still friendship side to it. And at that point, you got to remove the emotion from it.
Exactly.
It's not like, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, I'm not trying to.
Right.
This is just how it is, and we just got to continue to keep pushing forward. And when the time does come where I can open myself back up to give you that side of me and give you that energy that I'm able to provide you and be able to send that creativity into that route, sure. But like, it all comes down to the boundary.
Well, and the thing too is like, what would be the bigger fear? Telling someone you're going to do something and then resenting them, or disappointing them when you can't fulfill it?
I feel like,
especially when it's a friend, right? Like, so a friend comes to you, you're like, oh, I'm so indebted to help this guy, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then you can't come through because you just don't have the time. It's like, I'd rather piss him off and tell him no and have him a little butthurt than me towing the line for 2-3 weeks and then be like,
is like lying to you and saying X, Y, and Z, and then like coming back and it's like, yo.
Well, and it's this huge false expectation. And I think like the view on your character is way more detrimental when you look at it in that sense, because it's like, you just lied to this dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, in a way, you just kind of lied to the guy, right? Or whoever it is. But I think that's like a big thing, just like you're saying in life in general, where like people inherently, they want to help, right? They want to help people grow. They want to help people bring people up, but they don't necessarily understand of like, well, what kind of undertaking is this? And do I have like the time? Do I have the mental energy?
Yeah. Think about all the other things that are going on outside of life, right? Like family, relationships, friendships, like full-time jobs. Like, you got to think about all this stuff on top of it. And like myself personally, it's like I'm trying to control all of that. At the same time too, I'm trying to continuously pursue my artist side and my content side and my production side. So it's not only do I have all of this going on, I also have all of that going on that I need to be able to like balance and create space for.
Yeah.
And then this will eventually go into like, how do you balance like real life, and how do you balance like being an artist and being like a producer and like DJing,
and then at some point that becomes real life.
To be honest, it all comes down to discipline.
Yeah,
it's all discipline. Like my entire life has been all focused around discipline. Shout out to my mother for this, because my mother taught me and like kind of gave me all this discipline, I guess you could say, but and structure, right? So it's like I've a lot of structure in my life, and if I didn't have the structure in my life, I feel like I wouldn't be able to be successful in any aspect, not just music.
You wouldn't be able to wear so many different hats, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
So if I continue to stay disciplined and follow my vision and see the end goal and continue to keep manifesting that, I mean,
is there a hope at some point that this, like, whether it's in the near future, the very long-term future, has there ever been a time in your life when you said, I have to have a game plan for if I have the opportunity to make this a full-time gig? Have you like have you put a roadmap in your head of like, I put out a track, it fucking blows up.
Yeah.
A manager calls me, an accountant calls me, this guy calls me, this guy wants to collab. Like you look at the guy that did the fucking bar song, Shabuzi.
Okay.
One song, he does this Tipsy.
You never know what's gonna happen,
right?
Like...
So, or even the fucking Hawk Tua girl, where she fucking now all of a sudden like she's meeting Shaq, and like she had her social medias deleted for like 6 months before this happened. Now all of a sudden she's rolling into these podcasts with crews of 7 people, and you're like, how fast does this happen? Where it's like you just get taken out of your normal life, and it's like just simply because the content you created.
I guess it comes down to like the beauty of social media these days. Like social media is so powerful. Like, I mean, you think like maybe 20-30 years ago, like people didn't have this opportunity and this exposure. And I feel like social media is like almost like,
dude, it's like showing up to people's door.
Yeah, it's like
it's fucking crazy,
man. Success, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, like at any point in time, somebody can come across your page or come across your content and be like, hey, I see value with this person, and I see like maybe we could potentially do something.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And now with that too, I also think there's a level of humbleness that it takes, because the amount of people that I've reached out to, being like, hey, I would love you to have on the podcast, and I'm like shooting way above my reach, but it was kind of like with the intention of like, I have to know where I'm at, and I have to expect that a lot of people are going to say no, and I can't be upset about that, right?
Yeah, which is like, that stems back to like sending out tracks, right? Like I've sent out numerous tracks to numerous record labels, and they say, hey, we're not interested, like this is not really our sound, but maybe like maybe send us like another track in the future, or like send us more projects in the future. And I feel like that's all part of the game, right? Like again, music is so subjective, and I feel like not everybody's going to like what they hear, and not everybody's going to like what they're listening to in their ears. And it's like, that's totally fine. Like, you got to be okay with being rejected in life. Like, that's all part of life, whether it comes from music, work, friendships, relationships, etc. I feel like rejection is going to happen, and how you handle rejection will determine, I almost feel like, your future and your success. So like, going back to your question about like, where do I see myself in like the long-term future or the short-term future, it's like, to be honest with you, like, looking back, like from like the production of my first track that I released, I think like my vision has always been the bigger vision.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been the bigger vision, and I feel like that stems from like maybe like from like growing up in like, whether it be like university or whether it be like playing like a very, very high competitive sports,
Right.
like there's always that like drive to do better and do your best. So like, my vision with music is, music's going to take me where it's destined to take me.
Right.
And it won't just come overnight. And I feel like with music, you have to put in the work, you have to put in the energy, you have to put in the grind, because if you're not putting in that energy and the grind and the work, I don't know, like, some people just expect like things are just going to be handed to them like on a silver platter on their plate. And like, to be honest with you, it doesn't work that way. It's like, somebody will look at you and be like, oh man, you're lucky you got this opportunity. Or like, am I lucky? I don't want to say maybe, yeah, sure. There's definitely a huge aspect and piece of being lucky in certain situations for sure. But like, if you're not putting in the work and you're not putting in the grind, like, what do you expect? Do you think it's just going to come to you? I personally disagree with that. It's not, I don't think it's just going to be handed on a silver platter to you.
And I think
maybe some people have that like option because they know somebody or whatever. But like, to me personally, like, sure, I know a lot of good people, but at the same time too, it's like, I want to be able to offer something and bring something to the table.
Right.
You know, like, I don't want to just be like, oh, I need this or I want that, and like, it's just going to come to me. No, I'm going to put in the hard work. I'm going to put in the effort, because that's the way that I was raised, and that's the way that I've accomplished, like, to be honest with you, anything in my life.
Now, do you think with that, I think there's a level of like reflectiveness, right? Goggins famously said that like, you've got to have like a mental cookie jar where like, when you're at these times where you're at like an impasse where like you're not doing what you think you're doing, or you're not at the level where you've already done the things that you said was going to make you happy, right?
Yes.
That you should be happy about, right? I have to know how humble I am, but I also have to take the time and like be proud of myself. And 100%. Like, you know, so you have to take the time, you have to be proud of yourself. You have to say like, yeah, this might have not worked, but like, I did this, I performed at hundreds of venues. I've done this.
Keep chalking up the little wins.
Exactly. Right.
Little wins eventually turn into a victory.
Right.
So I feel like as time goes on, I almost feel like the whole process of this whole music artist DJ journey is the adventure.
Yeah.
Not put too much pressure on it.
Yeah.
Enjoy each day as it comes. Enjoy each process as it comes. Enjoy each opportunity as it comes, and just continue to keep going that route. Don't put pressure on it. Don't be too hard on yourself, because that's so easy to do and fall into that trap of being so hard on yourself, comparing yourself to this person or comparing yourself to that person. And to be honest with you, once you start doing that, then you might potentially turn into a spiral tunnel.
Right.
And that's the worst place that you want to be in, because at the end of the day, you're not doing it for this person. You're not doing it for that person. You're doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
Your passion, your love for what you're doing. Yeah. In my case is music.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, for example, if you're a part of a team, like, for example, myself, like, I'm a part of the cynical team, and like, to be honest with you, all of the little things and accomplishments that I'm achieving right now, I'm literally rediverting my energy into this team, because I want to see this entire team be successful. And that just comes down to almost like sharing the wealth with other people who have the exact same mindset as you. Right.
And it's funny you say that, because it comes in like a little bit of thing, because you talk about being in terms of this entertainment group. But I find I'm telling a lot of people right now where like they put on their social media and they're like, oh, I'm having a rough time, this and that. And I go like, you got to be easy on yourself, because like, you don't owe people shit. You know, so like, how much of that mentality do you have where like, nobody owes me anything, but I don't owe anybody anything else? And like, how working in like a collective group, you obviously have like your tasks and your aspects of things where you want to build people up. But like, I had this issue where I was coaching the other day, and the fucking other coach laid into me, told me I was frustrating her. And I was like, you think I care
Yeah.
that I'm frustrated. Like, I don't give a fuck
Yeah.
that you're frustrated. Like, I'm not here for you,
Yeah.
lady. Like you thought it was in my mind of like, I was going to annoy you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Because like, I'm not coaching you, right?
Yeah.
But it's one of these things where how much of that where you are setting your own lane, and then how much of that are you willing to relinquish that and be like, oh, well, there is this kind of collaboration.
Mhm.
Or even with that collaboration, do you still say, well, the expectation is like they might not come through or whatever, you know what I mean? And that maybe that's not necessarily with the group that you're working with Cynical, but maybe it's just a general, like you're collaborating with someone, and how much of that where you're like, I would love to see where this goes, but if it falls out, I'm not really going to be that butthurt because like I know you're probably as busy as I am, and like we're all just trying to figure it the fuck out.
Yeah, we're all like doing our own separate things on the side, but we're all bringing it like together too at the same time, and we all have the same vision. And it's like, to be honest with you, what it all comes down to is like, at the end of the day, I want to see everybody win, you know, and like at the same time that I want to win, of course, I want to see everybody else win. And there's certain people who will be a part of the puzzle, and there's certain people that won't be. And I've been in that position before where somebody couldn't see the greater picture of the things, and unfortunately that person chose his destiny, and things go on, you know, like that's the way life goes sometimes.
How much of it is it a dog eat dog thing, or is it just like you wait for your turn?
Depends on what kind of person you are. Like I'm the kind of person that that will wait for my turn for sure, but sometimes you see like people who are just like, not gonna lie here, I'm gonna be completely honest, but you see people who are like clout chasers and don't really have I don't know, they're clout chasers that just want to get up there and they just want to DJ, and they're just there to like chase the clout. Whereas like you actually have DJs and artists who are actually grinding and making music and doing the best that they possibly can, and they're being gatekeeped. And I'm not too sure why. Like it makes no sense to me, but like that's part of the industry sometimes. It's part of the politics, and at some point, I hope that changes. But as per like playing at festivals and playing slots and stuff like that, what I feel like the promoter and the event organizer, generally they're pretty good at categorizing DJs and artists and placing them as per time slot, as per show. Yeah,
I saw like even with the one that we just went to, it was categorized alphabetically.
Yeah, so that's just basic for like the event flyer, the event poster.
Okay.
Yeah, just alphabetically. So that doesn't like determine like who's playing first. It's just alphabetical. It has nothing to do with like who's playing first, who's playing last.
Because I was like, that's a really weird way of. I was like, so if you end up with the fucking A, you gotta play at 2:00. Yeah. So I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. That's interesting, and I think it's really interesting too when you look at some of these like solo, like say like stand-up comedy, tennis player, boxer, UFC fighter, et cetera, where a lot of what gets turned out is solely based on the flag work. People don't know how many hours you're spending making music. People don't know how many hours you're spending networking. Like if I told 100%. The amount of people, like the amount I'm on my phone, just like begging people like, hey, I'd love for you to come on my podcast, like hundreds of messages. And then I get someone on the podcast. Like how much did I have to do that?
Like you're doing your own homework before you can actually get this person on the show, you know? Like, and to be honest with you, like going back to what you just said, like the amount of work that you do behind the scenes, like to be honest with you, I'm on my phone and doing work almost 24/7.
Oh yeah.
I'm waking up in the middle of the night, or I'm like in the middle of like,
checking analytics or
whatever it is, right? Did I get an email back, or like did this person reach back and say they wanted to collab with me, etc. Like
and this might be like fucking months down the road, but it's like if you're not constantly like, and I found a big thing.
I feel like it comes down to like love and appreciation for like what you're doing, because like to be honest with you, like at this point for me it's not work.
You love doing it.
I love doing it,
and that's the same.
It's not even work. It's like I'm so passionate and I love doing it. So it's like it's not even like it's not even like I don't even second guess it. It's just like I do it because I'm so passionate and I care so much for it. Yeah,
that's part of the process, and like you're not gonna hit it on that and like the nail on the head every single time. And like there's gonna be times where like you just didn't do enough research, or there's gonna be a time where like you could have put these extra things into your track, and then when you play it, you're like, oh, this would have been good, or this would have been good. But like that's where the reflection comes in, and like just kind of understanding that like everybody's in this growth phase, right? And there's so many avenues for like branching out in different types of music, and then all of a sudden someone comes up with this concept that's never been heard of, and then hundreds of people adapt it, right? So it's it's very, very interesting because it's probably takes a lot of introspective or a lot of just knowing yourself and like managing those emotions. Do you have times where you find you're doing a lot of like internal dialogue or like internal management? Do you have a lot of internal dialogue when it comes to
be honest with you, not really. A lot of people are very straightforward, and I feel like if you kind of have some kind of like concern or like misconception through like an email or a text message, it's so easy to just pick up the phone and call somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and like I just feel like sometimes that's a lot easier and you can kind of get to the point with things versus like kind of like going through that like,
I wonder what this person
means, or like how is this person coming, like projecting like this email or this like text message, right? So like at that point, if it's like I'm kind of confused or I'm like kind of like feeling like a little about it, then I'll definitely tell them to pick up the phone for sure.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Conversation about it.
That's a big thing too that I've started to figure out, especially dealing with people like outside of Canada, where I have so many like housekeeping things, or I have so many things that like they're just not going to come through in text message. Where I'm like, hey man, if I can get 10 minutes of your time over the next week,
I'd rather just have a phone call versus like trying to go back and forth, because some things can get so lost in translation, and I'd rather not get lost in translation, just get straight to the point directly.
And then you know the outcome, right? Then you know like, okay, I'm going to do this collaborate, and you learn a lot from a person by looking at their face and like 100%. Talking to them through FaceTime or hearing their voice.
But I feel like I was fairly like open with my communication. Like I had a lot going on in the past month. Like I played this big event right across from Detroit there, right on the water. It was called what was it called? It's called the Pier.
Okay, bring me through that.
What a cool experience this was. So good friends of mine, Tim and Tyler, they own a production company down there. They are Void acoustic dealers. So Void is like one of the top ultimate systems like in the industry. And they throw events down in southwestern Ontario. And they do a lot of sound from Windsor up into Toronto. So they kind of like got that whole market of the southwestern Ontario right now. So they threw a festival called the Pier, which was like another open air event. Went from I think it was like 2 p.m. I think it was 2 p.m. till about 11 o'clock at night.
How long was your set?
My set was 1 hour. Yeah, it was 1 hour. Was it 1 hour? I'm forgetting now. Yeah, I think it was 1 hour.
Is the scene in the U.S. different?
So this location, there was DJs from Toronto, local DJs, and then I had another friend of mine from LA. His name's Jeremiah, such a gem of a dude. He flew in from LA, and he played right before me and handed off the decks to me, and I got to spend some time with him. But you have like crowds coming over from Detroit. Yeah, we had some fans coming through from Chicago. We had people coming through from Toronto. It was kind of like a hub just for everybody to meet and have like a really, really awesome time. The festival was fantastic. I honestly would love to play it again. And if I could play it again, I would 100% without any question. These guys are doing like really, really, really great things down there in southwestern Ontario, and to watch their growth in the past 2 years is fantastic.
Is it more of a grind? Is it more of a grind to get events in the U.S., or is it more of like a challenge networking and scheduling logistics wise to get out and do those events, or do you find like they're pretty accommodating too?
I think it comes down to like networking, right? Like I was just recently in Phoenix and connected with a few people down there, and there may potentially be in the horizon here something happening in Phoenix and Vegas. So just keep our fingers crossed and keep working towards the ultimate goal.
And that wasn't originally a business trip, was it?
No.
So then you just again coming back on the thing where it's like it's totally organic, right?
That was literally a trip that I was taking off. Like music shut off, production shut off, artists shut off, everything. It was just their goal to. I was there to enjoy time. One of my really, really good friends overcame leukemia, beat cancer at a young age, and fuck cancer because
congratulations.
Terrible thing. So there was just like a celebration, and next thing you know, I'm there, I'm connecting with people while I'm there, and it's opens up some more doors and opens up another opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but like for me it's all energy based. So if like I have some weird like kind of like tension or weird energy before I'm about to say something, that I won't even say, and I'll just like I'll eat my words. It's not worth it.
Yeah. Well, because you don't know like the especially in something like this where it's huge, like reputation based, where it's like, I don't want to piss off the wrong person. I don't want to say the wrong thing. And then all of a sudden, like I know like I have good integrity, I have good character, and now
Yeah.
this person sees me as like almost like a tainted person, like where, or they see me as somewhat of like sly, or like I'm not generally like, mine was like a huge
There's a lot of
thing
sly people in the
where
industry.
like where I essentially all I said was, hey, the reason I know you is because this guy introduced us.
Yeah.
Like, but then it was this big thing of like, I talked about his fights, I talked about this, right, to show him,
Yeah.
hey, like I've done my homework, like
Yeah.
I actually want to have you on a guest. It's not because I just have the option
Yeah.
to get you on. Like I'm still gonna, even though the only reason you answered me
Yeah.
was because I dropped this person's name,
Yeah.
I'm still gonna do the hard work.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's the same too, where like you might have like a friend in the industry or someone that can slide you into a spot, and it's like, well, as long as you're still performing and you're still like putting in like the 100% work,
Yeah.
I don't think there's much wrong with that. But say if you're given things on a silver platter and then you're showing up and doing a 50% job, or kind of being like, you know what I mean, shitty about it.
Yeah, you see it often. Yeah.
Right, where you're like, this
Definitely
guy just like rode through a set.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings us something we talked about off air, but
Yeah.
about the idea of like how many people are actually performing live and how many people are doing pre-recorded sets. I know like social media, like that's a big thing. Certain DJs talk about it where they go to these huge venues and they're like, you can't play live. And they're like, well, I'm not going to play.
Yeah, well, what do you want? Do you want my opinion on like pre-recorded sets, or do you want my opinion on like somebody playing live? Like,
I want to get a whole gist of it. So I want to get the idea. Is pre-recording a huge problem in the industry?
Me personally, like everybody has their own personal opinion, but I don't think it's good for the industry. I don't think pre-recorded sets is good for the industry, but there are certain festivals out there that require it based off of like for example, visuals and production and pyro and everything to make sure fireworks go off at this exact drop, or like this transition of visuals goes at this exact time of like this.
You're just media 100%. Fucking it.
Yeah, so like I mean, like at the end of the day, like once you're that big, like the production comes down to that for sure. But like I feel like yeah, for me personally, I feel like I don't have any room for pre-recorded sets.
Well, then I could just listen to someone's set on their fucking whatever.
Like, yeah, so like for example, myself, like when I perform, I know going into like my performance, I know that I know the first 2 tracks that I'm playing, and everything else is improv.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I do is like I pick my first track that I'm gonna play. I kind of see how the crowd reacts and adjusts to it, and then I have another track that's gonna come in after that one. And it varies. It's not. I never.
Now,
play
how
like
big's your loop box? Like how big? Like how many options do you give yourself? So you load this all onto your USB.
Yeah.
Like, so what is it? Are we talking 20 tracks, 40 tracks?
Like within a playlist for a set, depending on if it's an hour or an hour. Usually it depends. Like if I'm playing an hour and a half set, I usually have like maybe like 40 tracks in there. 40 tracks that I can like kind of like skim through based off of like what I want to play and what kind of route I want to go to. But like I said, let's go back to like when I first start playing the set. It's like I have one set track that I'm opening my set with, and then I have one that I'm going to be mixing into for sure. Mm-hmm. So I know my first 2 tracks. Everything after that will just be crowd reaction and based off of my energy that I'm feeling from the crowd. And I feel like that is such a beautiful way of DJing and being able to like get a grasp of like what people are feeling versus what people are not feeling. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you have, this is just my personal opinion, is that if you do have a pre-recorded set and it's like, you know what, at like 28 minutes of the set, everybody's going to go wild. Me personally, how do you know if people are going to go wild at 28 minutes? You don't know. So that's why I try to like gauge it based off of like intuition and based off of energy when I'm up there playing. Because when you're up there playing and you have a bunch of people in front of you, you feel the energy coming to you and you feel the energy going back. So it's like this like tidal wave that
you can tell because like people will start going for drinks or people will fucking, you know what I mean? Like all these stuff that they'll reserve if the music's good or like they're having a vibe. But then, and this just came to me right now.
For me, pre-recorded sets is just not for me, and like to each their own, right? Like if you want to play a pre-recorded set, go ahead and do it. But like for me personally, it's just not for me. It's not my style. I try to go in with a game plan, and I try to just stick to that. And it's like, to be honest with you, if there's a track that I play that doesn't work, say for example, the track is like 5 to 6 minutes, and I would play that track out 5 to 6 minutes.
You might cut it.
I might cut it at like 2 minutes. You know, like I might just cut it at 2 minutes and like redivert into another track, transition into another track.
And how much
that will bring the energy back up and bring the crowd and bring the energy back in.
And how much do you try to incorporate vocals? Because you see that some artists they try to have some sort of like a chorus vocal, stuff like that. How much again on top of that? how much does that require an additional amount of networking to kind of seek out the talent or seek out the people to do those vocals, or is it usually found on certain sites? Like how does
Are you
that
talking about like my own tracks or
yeah,
like...
or just like in terms of how you like creating that like do you more like the sound without vocals, or do you kind of have you been like kind of measuring that or gauging that, like putting vocals?
I feel like a crowd reacts to vocals like all the time. Like I feel like vocals are very, very important for a set. To each your own though. Like everybody prepares their own set the way that they want. I feel like putting some sort of vocals within your set when you're playing live, I feel like it kind of gives that kind of dynamic to the set, and it kind of like takes people through this another magical journey with you. When it comes to myself with vocals and putting vocals on my tracks, it's either I'm pulling real vocals from a vocalist that I have, or just find some sort of sample vocal and kind of like chop it up and put it within like the track that I create. Speaking of vocalists and vocals in a track, I'm actually releasing a track this Friday, July 5th on Bryce Kenneth Recordings.
Let's go.
And to collab with a local vocalist. Her name is Rochelle. And yeah, like I just randomly met her one night, and I was informed that she writes vocals on tracks, and I was like, well, maybe like one day we can work together. And then boom, next thing you know, like we already actually have 3 tracks made to, well, 2, third one's in the process. But yeah, we're going to be releasing our first collab this Friday at Bryce Kenneth Recordings. Yeah, looking really forward to that.
That's wicked.
Yeah.
Do you? I kind of want to transition here as
Her
well.
vocals are piercing, by the way.
Do you ever?
Excuse me.
Do you ever find that you have to be more reserved with how nice you are to people, or do you find that like there's, and not like working with females because this could be anybody, but do you find that like because there's a lot of emotion involved, and then on top of that you see like a lot of people, they be like mesmerized by like the performing artist, stuff like that, like how much are you playing like a person and how much of you are like holding back certain emotions? Like say you're working with an artist, are you ever worried about like does this chick think I might be flirting with her, and like, or not to the same degree, like,
yeah, I kind of understand what you're trying to say,
you know what I mean, like how much of it is like I'm not trying to like I'm not trying to give her that much attention, I'm going to talk to her in a certain way where like she feels comfortable and she knows like I'm not like overstepping those boundaries. And even when you look at like performing, how much of that, like when, like, because you probably went to certain events where like you've had groupies or you had the fangirls or whatever it is, right? Where it's like how much of that do you have to keep a level of professionalism, and then how much do you buy into it for the fun of it, not necessarily like taking people up on any offers, but how much of like do you like play into a character?
To be honest with you, I try to just be my true authentic self at all times, whether I'm just there like socializing with people in the crowd, or if like I'm up there on stage performing, or I'm working with somebody behind the scenes in terms of creating music. I feel like be professional always, and at the same time too, even though it is business, but like there is still like friendships, you know, and it's like I can still, like I know my boundaries, right? So like being like if you're in a relationship, but respect your partner, you know what I mean? And like I've experienced that in the past where it's like, and this can go for men and it can go for women. It's not just strictly men and strictly women based, because obviously you have female artists and you have
that are fantastic.
100%.
Yeah.
And
I could only imagine the amount of like,
it comes down, at the end of the day, honestly, it just comes down to respect for not only yourself, but it comes down to the respect for your family and friends and your partner around you. So it's like, say for example, I'm in a relationship and I go to DJ. Of course, there's gonna be females there.
Yeah.
There's a female DJ that's performing there. Of course, there's gonna be male fans that are around there.
Exactly.
Right? And like, not to get things twisted here, but like, it all comes down to like what kind of person you are, you know.
And it's what happens when the cameras are off.
When the cameras are off too, yeah. But at the same time too, it's like, or like the night ends, or you go to an after party or something like that. You know, it's like, what kind of person are you? It's like, where are your morals and what
are your intentions?
Like I've been in that position in the past before, where of course, like playing music is like something that I genuinely love so much. It could be the same for somebody who plays tennis. It could be the same for somebody who goes to curling. Like I'm just giving you examples, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, you need somebody, and I'm gonna like dive into like a relationship aspect. You need somebody who's willing to not want, like support you.
Yes.
And if you have a jealous partner, that is probably one of the hardest things, that because you're trying to chase your dream, you're trying to chase your passion, and if you have somebody who's constantly like nagging on you or saying like you can't do this or you can't do that, and it's like, but like I'm still being respectful and still being respectful to you, but still following my passion, and it's like I'm not going to jeopardize our relationship while I'm up there playing music because other people are there like having a good time. You know what I mean? And if I were like, maybe I shouldn't be in a relationship with you, and maybe I should reconsider like my morals and values at the end of the day.
Do you find there's like a stigma with DJs? Do you find like are there a lot of DJs that are in long-term relationships, or do you see a lot of DJs that are single? And is that because they're following a roadmap, or is it because like genuinely that's where their life landed them? Like, do they think because I have to be a DJ, I have to be single, I have to sleep with different women, I gotta go? Or do you find like that's just a misconception and like people are just
Or men.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a misconception, but I also feel like it depends on who the person is.
Like you said, talk about cloud chasing. So it's like that would come hand in hand with cloud chasing. Of like, well, if I'm looking for the image, I'm gonna fit into that character role.
Yeah, so, like what do you want from it? Like, are you up there just playing music and like catching all the attention, and then you like want all this attention from other people from behind you, or are you actually up there for the purpose of music?
And then you go back and you tend to your personal life and you do that.
Yeah.
What has been, well, since we're going to talk about relationship, what do you think is the biggest challenge that you have maintaining relationships while even working on the road, working as a DJ, even just like collaborating with people? Like, what would you say is like your biggest challenge maintaining relationships?
Family on my end of things. My family is very, very supportive of anything that I do musically. They're at this moment, like they're pushing me and telling me to do as much as I possibly can.
100%.
And they're there supporting me 100%. As per like a relationship, are you asking me like what I would need from a partner, or what?
No, I mean like has there been like circumstances where you've been in relationships and said like being on the road is like the hardest, or doing live performances is hard, or working with other female DJs is like the hardest because it causes turmoil?
Yeah, it causes turmoil or conflict, because it's like immediately like some people automatically assume like, oh, because I'm DJing after or before, like in this circumstance, a female DJ, that like I'm interested in the female DJ, or like, why are you up there with a female DJ? Yeah. It's like it has nothing to do.
That's she's so out of your hand.
It's so out of my hand, and it's like you have male DJs, you have female DJs, you have like, like if I get booked to play before a female or after a female, what does that have to do with anything? It has absolutely nothing to do with like my intention is not like, oh, there's a female DJ there
and I'm going to try to impress them.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, that is like, and to be honest with you, Ryan, that's a very, very immature mindset.
I was just going to say that.
It's a very, very immature mindset.
Well, you're just picking at straws.
Yeah.
Like, and usually people like that it's probably going to be with any like occupation you have. It's going to be any job you have. Like if you're getting attention from anybody of any sort, it's like that's probably a self-esteem thing with the person that you're dating. And that's kind of lines me into the next question.
I feel like there's going to be an expiry on that.
Yes.
There's going to be an expiry. There's going to be a time where it's like, okay, I actually can't take anymore.
I'm
also going to say like, I'm also going to add in here, like I've been in the past too, where it's like, I'm going into the studio and I'm learning and I'm trying to like learn more production and learn more tricks of the trade.
Like, how long are you going to be?
How long are you going to be there for? Like, who you with, or why are you there so long? Why didn't you answer my phone? It's like,
because I'm
in my corner, to be honest with you.
Let me cook.
But yeah, like that kind of person on my end of things, and not be able to, it wouldn't be sustainable long term.
Right. So with that, if you were to give an upcoming DJ just a tidbit of advice on what exactly they should be trying to look in character aspects in a significant other, what do you think would be like do you think like a level of understanding, or
in terms of like trying to progress,
in terms of being in a romantic relationship? Like, what do you think do you think it's self-esteem? Do you think it's like communication?
Communication is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Communication is the biggest thing. And like it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's like I'd rather tell somebody the honest truth and tell them how I feel versus like trying to like beat around the bush, and then it eventually builds up to the point where like you breach that threshold and you just like, I don't know, you just lose it or something.
Have you ever not invited someone to your event because you were worried they were going to fuck it up?
I don't know. No, not really.
Like there's certain people that like don't
Not really.
there's like certain people that like don't get invited to weddings because they're like, oh, this person's gonna make a fool of themselves, or like I don't want my name being attached to this person in this kind of like public domain.
There's definitely something that happened in my past that chapter is closed, thankfully. And to be honest with you, since that chapter is closed, it's allowed so much more doors to open. It was almost like that was hindering my success of becoming like who I am today.
Yeah, a little growth period.
Yeah, and I'm glad like that was a thing that was like kind of like blocking me from like getting to the next, you know.
Now,
and
was
I'm
it
glad
like,
that has like that door has closed.
was it more of a mental thing or like a physical thing with that type of aspect of getting like, was that more
it was
of like
more of like it was more of like a mental thing. It was
yeah, like getting out of your own way.
Yeah, it was like get out of my way and like let me continue to keep going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was like the situation was like hindering me.
Yeah.
Although like looking back, like there was a lot of like success and a lot of good things that came from the whole situation, but at the same time too, it was like, yeah.
Even if it's a rocky road, like the process to any success is going to be a fucking grind, right?
Yeah, of course. It's like, it's always a grind.
Yeah,
every day's
so
a grind.
even if you're going along this road and then you kind of trip and stumble and this and that, it's like that's expected, right?
Yeah, and like to be honest with you, like a lot of experiences that have happened in my life have gotten to me where I am today. Like for example, production and producing. Like if I didn't go through some really really hardships in my life in the past year to 2 years, to be honest with you, I don't know if I would be even in this position that I'm in right now, because a lot of the things that I went through in the past 2 years in my life personally has given me such crazy motivation and so much like inspiration and so much like emotion to just like get out there. So like a lot of my productions and a lot of things that I have been doing in the past year, it stems from a lot of hurt, a lot of frustration, a lot of confusion, a lot of people second guessing who I am as a person, and it has allowed me to light this fire within me that is not going to stop.
It's kind of like on the episode of The Bear where he just goes like, fuck you, watch this. Like in a way of like, I'm going to like, in a way of like, not only you're going to prove it to people, but you're going to prove it to yourself, 100%, right? Where it's kind of like,
when you doubted me, I'm going to show you.
And it's like, and it's not in like a vengeful way. It's not in like you being a fucking cock about it. It's just like, hey, I'm going to fucking like, oh, you don't think I'm going to do it? Okay, see you at the finish line.
Yeah, see
like that's because you're not doing the work, and if you fucking wanted it as bad as I am, then you'd be in the fucking room.
Yeah.
Right? So do you think it's one of those things where it's... Because, like, is this to prove yourself right, or this to prove people around you right?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I've just kind of like... excuse me, I've kind of taken on the mentality of bet on yourself. And I'm not out here doing it for anybody else. I'm out here... And I'm not saying this like as from like a selfish standpoint. I'm out here betting on myself in hopes to see what happens, you know? And like, definitely see a greater picture. And to be honest with you, the people that are around me, the people who have supported me, the people who have pushed me, the people who have showed up, the people who have showed up to events where there's not too many people, the people who have showed up where it's fully pinned and packed and they're like, hey man, can I get on my guest list? Like there's no more tickets, it's sold out.
Yeah.
Like the people who are there through the hardships and the good times, we're going to go together, you know? It's not like, I'm not out here to prove to like, I'm doing this for you, or I'm doing this because you did this to me. Say, for example, you booked me for a show and then you canceled on me last minute. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to hook you up with the next one. And it's like, you know what? Like, man, to be honest with you, like, leave that stuff at the door. Like, that's minimal for me. I see a way bigger picture than that. If that's where you see me as an artist, I'm not saying that to like put my pride up there or anything like that. It's like, you know what, that's fine.
No, but it's the same thing.
I don't forget,
right?
I think ultimately it just comes down to the respect for the person as a whole. And if like you can't see me in that perspective in your life or in this industry or in this market, then like that's fine.
Yeah,
that's okay. It's not going to hurt my feelings. It may sting for a second or two, but that's totally okay. I see beyond that, and I look past that, because again, it comes down to people out there who, I don't want to get too much into this, but it just comes down to people who try to step on you to make you feel smaller and try to like not have your growth and not make you succeed. And that's totally fine, because you know what? I'm still going to overcome it, because I've been through a lot harder things in my life, not somebody trying to just step on me to make me feel smaller.
It's really funny. One of our coworkers, he talked about this quote where he's like, people who can't reach the apple tree, they'll tell other people that the apple's spoiled.
Yeah.
He's like, instead of helping them get to, even if they can reach it, they're telling those people like, oh, that apple's rotten. And it's not necessarily because it's like they just don't want the other guy eating the apple, right?
Yeah.
So it's very funny in that sense. We're going to wrap this up. I have a couple of just quick questions.
Yeah, for sure. I want to answer a few more questions.
Yeah. Where in the next 5 years, where do you see yourself professionally? Have you been branching out to different countries? Have you been trying to collaborate with different people? How do you see your professional and personal growth over the next 5 years?
To be honest with you, I'm going to continue to keep working as hard as I am. I'm going to continue to keep producing as much music as I possibly can. I have a lot of music produced that it hasn't been heard. I have a lot coming up. A lot of records that are already signed that haven't been released yet. I still want to continue to keep branching out. I feel like, obviously, like my roots are Canada, right?
Right.
My roots are like, of course, Edmonton has given me a big chance, a big platform to be able to grow and start. Obviously, from Twitch. Let's give a big shout out to Twitch because I gained a lot of traction on Twitch during the pandemic. The pandemic was huge for me. I was able to stream on Twitch and gain a pretty good fan base around the world, in which a lot of, I don't even want to call them all like fans. Like I've gained a lot of friends from Twitch too.
Probably people to collaborate with.
Yeah, but like I won't be going back to Twitch ever again. Unfortunately, that has seen its day. It gave me such valuable. It gave me such value during the time, but sometimes things come to an end, and it unfortunately came to an end. But it is what it is. It allowed me to get into the route of exerting my energy elsewhere, which kind of like came into production. Mm-hmm. But like I said, like I was just back in Ontario playing that show at the Pier, which was fantastic, and the crowd there was amazing. The energy was unreal. Like, yeah, like that was such a good time. 2 weeks ago, I was in Vancouver. I love Vancouver. Vancouver is such a beautiful place. The music scene out there is incredible. I got to play at the after hours there called Gorgamish, which is like a world renowned afters, which was fantastic. I can't wait to hopefully go back there and play again. Mm-hmm. But I want to see myself grow even further, like obviously into the States and hopefully out into Europe. I've already played out in Germany once. I almost just got into a beach club out in Italy, which would have been fantastic, but some things fall through and that's totally okay. There's more opportunities that will come here in the future. But to be honest with you, just keep my nose down, remain humble, keep grinding and keep trying to have that creative avenue and that creative aspect to be able to produce music. And to be honest with you, a lot of that comes from like experiences, listening to different tracks, going to different venues, and and to be honest with you, also just spending time out in nature, because I feel like a lot of my production comes from like being out in nature as well.
Just feeling
everything. Yeah, I'm a big mix of like introvert, extrovert. So it's like I'll be extremely extroverted, and then like my energy levels will just like start to crumble, and then I'll just go into like my own cocoon and just like be introverted for like a good solid week. Yeah. And recharge my batteries.
Oh, I'm the exact same. Do you want to share with some people about your projects and stuff coming up in the month of July? July 6th is your next event?
July 6th, yeah. So I have a release coming up July 5th, which I mentioned earlier. Okay. That track is coming out on Rice Bowl Recordings with Rochelle. July 6th, I am playing Sunkissed here in Edmonton. It's an open air event. A lot of local DJs. It'll be a fantastic night. I hope a lot of people come through. This event has actually been one of the most popular through Cynical in the past, I believe, 2 years. So I do hope to see a lot of people out there for that. We will be there live streaming at some point. We're definitely going to hang out there. I don't know if Richard will be there. I'll hoax him into doing it. But we'll be there definitely checking out. So check out our socials and your socials as well for upcoming events. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else I have on the go here. July 13th, I'll be in Calgary playing on the Badlands ground at the Red Bull party. So I'll be playing that. And then I'll also be playing an after party at the Commonwealth that hasn't been announced yet, but that'll be an after party on the 13th in Calgary. And then August 10th, the Womp. Yes, the Womp is a big outdoor camping festival here in Alberta, in Evansburg, Alberta. This will be my first year playing there. I'm very excited to be playing there. It's gonna be an interesting one. It's gonna be a early morning set, which
And
will
your-
be fantastic.
And your latest track that you just released was, how do you pronounce it? Mitternach?
Mitternach.
Mitternach.
Yeah, which is translation for midnight in German dialect.
Yeah, that's out right now.
Yeah, that one
Deep Sessions recordings. Make sure to check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great. We'll be sharing all of your social medias. We'll be clipping this into small little bite-sized content as well as the full episode. But we won't keep you any longer.
Yeah, I want to I just want to say thanks for having me. I appreciate it. A lot of good questions asked. Maybe in the future, maybe like towards the end of the year, we can reconnect.
100%, man.
Chat about everything that we've kind of like been through and the growth since this podcast.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Talk about the events that you're going through, see some growth.
Yeah. For sure.
Again, the idea of this solo spotlight is to generally put a spotlight on people that are truly inspiring. Your passion for music, dedication to the craft, it's absolutely inspiring. For our listeners, make sure to check out Bryce Kenneth on Instagram. Follow his latest track releases and performances. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes coming from us. No matter where you are on your journey, you're never here alone when you tune into the Solo Spotlight. So be sure to check us out. And again, thank you so much for coming on, Bryce. Truly appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.